How do you bring the gospel to intelligent people these days? This might sound like an offensive question when you hear it the first time. It's a question that's been on air for thousands and thousands of years. How do we bring the gospel to anyone, intelligent or not? What formula do you use? What strategies do you use? And people have been trying to do this for centuries. In this video, I'm gonna share with you an universal formula. It works for everyone. Hang around, you're gonna love this video if you're into that kind of stuff. Let's go.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go.
I had this question from a student of mine at Bible college. She came to me and said that her friends are quite into science and scientific stuff, and they look for answers in all sorts of places. And when it comes to Christianity and faith, they always think that it's kind of shallow. It's kind of like silly to believe those kind of things. So she came to me and said, do we have any formulas? Do we have any resources that we can share with them? And surely I sat down with her and I showed her during the coffee that we had together that people have been trying to do this for centuries. Thomas Aquinas and Frank Turek, apologetics, and I showed her a few resources. But at the end of the day, the gospel should be something universal, very easy to share. Then I remembered this friend of mine called Dave Ferguson. He's written a few books and he's been all over the place. A lot of people know him. And one of the books he wrote is called Bless, an everyday strategy to change the world and love your neighbor. Something along these lines. I've read the book, and recently I had the chance to catch up with him here in Australia on an event, and I told him, Dave, this is an amazing formula. This works for everyone. So I would love to share that with you. I'm amazed that Dave hasn't done anything online yet to share this with the world. So this is me copying the formula that Dave put in the book and just trying to put it out there to the world. So Dave, if you see this, you can use this to it's yours, bro. It's yours.
We are better together.
Anyway, he came up with this acronym called BLESS. It's a formula to love your neighbor and change the world around us. It works with everyone. Like I said, it works with intelligent people. It works with not so intelligent people. It works with everyone. It's a universal formula. BLESS stands for 5 things you can do for your neighbors, and you can consider your neighbor whoever you want. You remember the definition of the neighbor when Jesus told the parable of the Samaritan? The guy was lying down there and a couple of people went by, didn't do anything. Then the Samaritan came. Obviously, there is a contrast here. We're not going to go into details. And the Samaritan helped. So Jesus asked the disciples who were listening to the parable, who do you think was his neighbor? And the disciples obviously answered, the guy who helped. So your neighbor is anyone you come in touch with, anyone in your surroundings, anyone you can influence by your presence is your neighbor. So it could be your neighbor, physical neighbor living beside you. It could be the people living in the same street. It could be the people you work with. It could be the people you go to college or university or school with. It could be the people that you just cross on the gym or whatever. Anyone you come in touch with could be your neighbor. So what's the formula that we use to bless the neighbors, to love your neighbors and change the world? It's a formula with 5 letters, and like I said, each one of these letters stands for one thing you can do for your neighbor. B stands for begin with prayer. I know it's not very original. Dave is always saying, oh, it was a bit of a stretch on that one, but begin with prayer. I love the fact that when he wrote down the book, he said, begin. The first step is always prayer. You put their names in your prayers. And Dave's got this method. He's, being American, they love graphs and statistics and all of that. So they write down everything. And like myself, he writes down his prayers in a journal. And every day when he wakes up and he's doing his prayer, his devotional in the morning, he writes down the name, according to him, of 8 people he's been praying for. Just praying that God would give him the opportunity to share with them and to cross their paths. And he just writes down their names. I've been praying for people for 20 years. And sometimes it's just a matter of waiting and just walking along that path. But anyway, write down the name of them. He writes their names, and you don't need to write it. You can do your own thing, but start with prayer. Begin with prayer. Prayer is not something that moves God into a position. Prayer is something that moves you into alignment with what God is doing. That's what prayer does. So prayer has that power to change your heart, change your convictions, change your mind, and open your eyes to the things that God is doing. So begin with prayer every day. Begin with prayer. If you want to bring the gospel to anyone, you want to evangelize anyone, you want to disciple anyone that is in your surroundings, begin with prayer. Pray for them intentionally. Make sure that you interact with God and you bring them to the conversation and you expose whatever it is that you are trying to expose. B stands for begin with prayer. Hey, if you're enjoying what we're sharing here, why don't you subscribe to the channel so we know who we're talking to and you can become part of our family. Hit the subscribe button right there, and maybe if you feel like it, drop a comment if this has helped you. It helps us certainly to identify who's connecting with us and who's engaging with our content. Let's go back to our video. Second letter, L. L stands for listen. Listen. We have lost the ability to listen. Listen, people, we have lost the ability to listen. We have fallen into the habit of hearing a lot of things because we're distracted at all times, but we don't listen. In one of the last videos that I shared here, I talked about active listening. I was talking about emotional intelligence, and I said one of the characteristics of someone who is highly intelligent when it comes to their emotions is the ability to listen. Listen actively, not thinking about the answer you're going to provide when they finish, but just paying attention. The reason why that's important is because when you listen carefully and you listen actively, you lean forward, you put away your phone, you give them your fully devoted attention. The reason why that's important is because in that conversation, you will be able to dig for things that you wouldn't find out unless you were listening. You would be amazed that one of the things that people want the most is to be listened. A lot of times you hear people saying to one another, "You're such a good friend," but what they really mean is, "You listen so well. I feel so comfortable around you, sharing my things, that you're just listening." Every good leader is a good listener. So listen actively. You begin with prayer and then you listen. In every conversation you have, every interaction you have, every time you cross each other on the hallway and you're standing at the water fountain and you just listen. You ask the question and you just listen intentionally and carefully. They will love you for that. Then the third letter is the letter E. E stands for eat. Boy, oh boy, we're good at eating. We are good at eating. We Brazilians, we are good at eating. I'm owning that, okay? Guilty. We eat a lot. You go to a Brazilian house for lunch and you're not out of there until it's evening time. Sometimes, like we're here in Australia, it's a funny thing. People go out for coffees, all right? They call this ketchups. I've always found it very strange that you have a time to start and a time to finish. Obviously, people got to go to work and do their things, but it's somehow superficial. The other day, I heard this guy, he's Australian, married to a Brazilian, and he's saying, the Brazilians know how to do fellowship because you leave church, you go to their house for a barbecue, and barbecue starts at 12:30 and it might finish at about 9. They will eat 4 times and they will go out, play with the kids, go in the pool, come back, eat again, put a steak on the grill. It's constantly going because we're always around the table. The most relevant information that Jesus shared with the disciples was around a table. For the Jewish people, when you sit on their table, it means that you're invited into the family. When you eat their food, it means they're sharing the blessing that God has blessed them with you. You're part of their blessing. It's not just I'm blessing you, but you're a part of my blessing now that you've sat on my table, you've eaten from my food. We are good at eating. And it's around the table that God has commanded Moses, for example, to teach the kids of Israel all the traditions of the law and the stories and the crossing of the seas. It was all around the table. We would do very well if we learned to have fellowship around the table. And you will be amazed how many people will be in awe if you just invite them over for a meal. And it doesn't have to be barbecue. You can do whatever you feel comfortable with, and it doesn't have to be a meal. You can just invite them over to go somewhere else, to go do something together. Take your kids, go with them, go to a park, go do something, but just hang out with them, spend time, quality time. I'm not talking about calendar time. I'm talking about quality time. And yes, quality time must be put in the calendar, otherwise it never happens. But I'm talking about that little extra something that goes beyond just the 30 minutes of a regular catch up. I'm not looking at sitting down in front of you and you tell me what's going on in your life, I'll tell you what's going on in my life, and then we finished. No, I'm looking for intimacy. I'm looking for depth in our conversations. That's true friendship. That's fellowship. That's why it's good to sit around the table, because when we sit around the table, we eat together, we partake of all that's on the table, and we have a common union. Back in the days, the traditions would say that this is communion, common union. We have that in common. The body of Christ is being celebrated on a meal. So eat. Eat stands for eat. We gotta learn how to do more barbecues, man, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I've got this private community on Patreon where we share extended content and exclusive stuff, and some of these videos are more detailed there, and it's an amazing community. But it's basically made for people who understand our mission. They understand that we just want to go out there and inspire people with the content that we produce, adding value to their lives, and it's an amazing journey trying to propagate this amazing message that can change lives around the world. And if you feel like supporting what we do, why don't you just jump on Patreon? It's an amazing thing, and you can certainly help us spread the mission, spread the vision, spread this message all across the globe using resources like this. A lot of people are actually putting all of their attention on screens, on devices, and our goal is just to reach them where they are. So if you want to help us, jump on Patreon. There's something for you there exclusively. There's something for you there that you can take advantage of, but most importantly, you can join our team and we can join our efforts in this amazing mission to reach the people with this amazing message that we have. Let's go back to our video, and then we move on to S. The first S stands for serve. Serving, just as eating, is something that we got to get into the habit of. If you find a place where you can serve, and it doesn't necessarily have to be church. We have fallen into this mindset that, when we talk about serving, we're always mentioning church. It doesn't have to be church. Church is a very underutilized building. We go to church on Sundays and we do nothing else with that place, and then we don't see people. We go to work. How about the other people that you see at work? You see, we spend 1 or 2 hours on a Sunday together, quote unquote, worshiping the Lord. But what about the other 167 hours, 166 hours during the week, 24 hours every day? What do we do with that? We would be much more effective if we had something to do with those hours than something to do only on a Sunday. Church has never been about the Sunday. So find a place to serve. Serve your community, serve the local school, serve your neighbor. If you look around and you see that, the grass is too big, go mow the lawn for your neighbor. Go just paint a house. We've done so much of that in the last few years. I remember when I was still in Brazil, about 40 years ago, every month of March in Brazil, especially in the region where I live, in Rio de Janeiro, it's a rainy season. So it rains a lot. It just pours down and down and down and down. And because it's a third world country and people are still in the bad habit of littering and just throwing rubbish everywhere, it floods the rivers around the city, and it floods to a level where it just reaches people's houses and it's a mess and people lose everything. Every year is the same cycle. About 4 years ago, that happened in my neighborhood. The level of the water rose to a dangerous level. It invaded a few houses. Some people lost a lot of things. Some people lost a lot of things. By the time the rain finished, all we could see was mud. Thankfully, my family lived a little bit up on the road, so it wouldn't reach our house. But we were moved with compassion for the other people, and we didn't have anything to do. It was just too much mud, just too much destruction. So I did what I could do. I put my hands on the shovel, and I just went down. Shovel or shove, whatever. I grabbed some tools and I went down to the playground area on the bottom of the street where the kids used to play, and it was covered in mud. So what I started doing was I was just dragging some of the mud to the middle of the road and then trying to put somewhere once it was starting to dry. It felt like a useless effort. It felt like I was on a sea of mud, and indeed I was. But a couple of neighbors saw what I was doing. They came to me and said, "What are you doing? This is not your responsibility. It's not your job. The government is supposed to do this. The council is supposed to do this." And my reply was instant. I said, "I know. But if I wait until they come, I'm going to have to put up with this for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. I don't want to do that. I live here. So I'm doing my part." Next thing you know, they went back inside, came back out with a few tools in their hands and started doing the same. Serving is contagious. You find a place to serve. Serve in your local playground. Serve, teach sports to some kids at school. Whatever it is that you find doing, serve your neighbors. Serve. Just like eating together, serving is a door opener for the conversations of the Gospels, for the conversation of the gospel. All of these letters, they stand for something you can do to open a door to have a conversation about the gospel. You can begin with prayer, you can listen actively, you can eat together, you can serve somewhere, somehow, someone, and last but not least, you share your story. That's the last S, story. You share your story. A lot of people start this gospel conversation in a reverse order. They want to share their story and then they leave. All they want to do is just to identify someone who, quote unquote, needs the gospel, needs Jesus, needs to surrender their lives to Jesus. And then they just go like, okay, you're a sinner, you got to repent, you got to give your life to Jesus. And they walk away and they don't know what to do. And people go like, whoa, that's way too much. I didn't sign up for that. Hold up a second. And that's why the conversation about the gospel has become ineffective. But if we want to change the world and if we want to love our neighbors well, as Dave points out in his book so brilliantly, what we want to do is we want to begin with prayer, and then we want to active listening. We want to listen actively. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to the conversations around us. And then we want to find room to eat together with people, invite them over for meals. And once we've done that, then we find places to serve. We serve them. We serve somehow, somewhere, someone. And once that's all done, a door will open for you to share your story. I cannot stress enough the fact that people will not listen to you if you don't have enough relational equity. But if you build that relational equity for a period of time, then the opportunity will come and they will listen to you. This saying is trustworthy. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Get this, memorize this, put that in practice. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The first step, the initiative, the first part of the gospel conversation with intelligent people or not so intelligent people, with anyone and everyone, is we begin with prayer. We build a relational equity, and then we listen to them so we can find the points of the conversation and the common ground, and then we eat together, build that relationship, build that equity. So when you say something, they will listen to you. Then you serve them, serve someone, somehow, somewhere, and last, you share your story. I think I've shared my story many times here on YouTube, and people will relate to your story once they know how much you care. But a lot of people, even though they have the same story as you, they won't relate because you haven't given them a chance to get close. I grew up in a typical atheist house, didn't have a really good relationship with my father. I've attempted against his life. And when Jesus saved me, it was a radical conversion. And then I went back home. We've become good friends. And here I am trying to preach the gospel and spread the gospel to anyone and everyone. It's an incredible story. I can tell you with more details one day. But people won't care until they know that I am willing to listen to them and care for them. At the end of the day, this is an amazing tool. Bless. 5 ways to effectively love your neighbor and change the world. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing method. It works for everyone. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I sure hope you use this. Start using this intentionally. Be it with your journal, if you have a journal, or just in your prayers. Start today. Begin today. It will make a massive difference in the world. Trust me. I know what I'm saying. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. I've done it. I've been there. I've done that. It is amazing. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you use it. And I'll see you on the next video. God bless.